I mean, how can you not groove to that music? Hello, everybody. Welcome to TV Talk, brought to you by the Ayn Rand Center UK. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus. Ayn Rand Center. Oops, I'm hearing a little echo there, so somebody's got to cut that out. But anyway, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus here, so it's taken us a few weeks to bring you Ozark, which is the show we'll be talking about next. But I want you to know that sometimes we relate these shows to Atlas Shrugged. But we always talk about them from the perspective of an objectivist point of view. So hopefully that makes the TV talk a little bit interesting. I think as objectivists, we have to be a little circumspect about shows and accepting of shows out there, because the majority of them don't align with our values at all. So we have to pick and choose aspects of the shows that are very good. Because some of these shows that don't align with our values are very good. And Ozark, I think, would be one of those. It is let me just pull up a little bit of the bio of Ozark. So Ozark was created by Bill Dubuque and Mark Williams for Netflix, and it was produced by MRC Television and Aggregate Films. I don't know what Aggregate Films has done previously, but I'm sure maybe the girls, our usual suspects, can fill us in, who I forgot to introduce because of, hey, I've got COVID brain. But my usual suspects here are Jennifer Bouani and Jack Schumann. Say hello to them, guys, before I continue with this.
Hello to them, guys.
Hi, guys. Before I continue with this little bio of Ozark. And the series stars Jason Bateman, who I think is one of the most underrated actors in Hollywood. Laura Linney as Marty and Wendy Bird, who are a couple who wind up laundering money for the Mexican drug cartels and have to do it in the Ozarks. And that's pretty much what the whole series is based around, is them laundering money for the drug cartels and escaping various dangers. So we don't have to get into all the crazy awards that this thing has won for all the characters involved. Or we can, but you guys can get into it since you're not suffering from COVID brain like I am. What did you guys think of this series? This 4-year-long series that ran over 5 or almost 6 years. There's long gaps in between the seasons, not just because of us, but because there were actual gaps between the seasons.
Well, I love this series. I was, from the very beginning, was hooked every season. And I don't know what it is about these darker shows that I think this falls in the same category as Breaking Bad. You've got like not just one, but a whole family of characters that are going off the deep end. But it's so well done. The writing is really well done. All of the conflicts, you've got conflicts of the family with the FBI, with the cartel, but you also have these two local families in the Ozarks, the Snells and the Langhorns, and all of the intricate details of those conflicts come out and come to play. And then on top of that, every season they just throw bigger problems at this family and they have to figure their way out of it. And it's never overdone. It never gets ridiculous. They do such a good job. The acting was amazing, especially Wendy and Ruth. Those characters were just off the charts, amazing. And great arcs, even the children, their arcs and what they go through. It's so good. I love this show. What about you, Jax?
I grew to love it. So as we were talking about yesterday, when I first I saw the season 1, and I loved season 1. I think Jennifer, you and I might have been watching season 1 sort of at the same time, and I remember talking to you about it. I really, really loved it. I just thought, I mean, it starts literally with a bang, right? Body gets thrown over. Marty's ex-business partner is thrown off a balcony, and or wait, no, was he thrown off a balcony?
No,
Or was
no, that's
No, the
Sugar.
lover.
Sorry, it was the
Lover.
guy that Wendy was having an affair with, right?
Yeah.
Was thrown off the balcony. I mean, it just starts crazy like that, and then how Marty, we were talking yesterday about how he is like this badass accountant, and how, he just took to the money laundering, like after some convincing, he took to it very well. My issue with it, when season 2 came out and I watched the first couple episodes, I for whatever reason, I was not in the headspace to watch a show about the downfall of a family into a life of crime, because I could tell already that the whole thing just wasn't going to end well. You know, they weren't going to they weren't going to like find some sort of moral compass, and to me it just kept on getting like darker and darker, and so I sort of gave up on it until we decided to do it for TV Talk, and then went back, and then really in the same way that Jennifer appreciated the darkness of it and the arcs and the writing. The acting was so brilliant. It never went, I mean, it went over the top, but never without being over the top, right? They did such a great job of throwing more and more stuff at you. That we were talking about this last night, that they never jumped the shark, which was a metaphor from Happy Days when Fonzie was actually like water skiing and jumped over a shark because they needed to make the show more crazy and compelling. So I thought it was great. Absolutely, like completely misaligned with any like objectivist heroic values. Except I think probably the closest hero in this was Ruth. You know, the one in the sort of in the same way that Jesse became the real hero in Breaking Bad.
She almost had a chance to pull herself out and really wanted to clear her record and get a fresh new start, which was highly rational. But then it just didn't happen. She had to do tit for tat and kill the guy that killed her family member, and then it just snowballed from there, and she never recovered. But yeah, it was a tragedy all the way around.
One of the great things
Mark,
about it,
you had an issue with
we'll talk about, remind me about that in a minute. What I want to say is with respect to the tone, one of the great things about a show only going 10 episodes, which is sort of a steal from the BBC. The BBC does 6-episode limited series arcs, and the good thing about having series that are limited to 10 as opposed to 22 or 23 episodes is it gives the writers a sense of continuity that they wouldn't ordinarily have. They can figure out an entire storyline in advance without having to scramble in the writer's room and patch. You'll find many shows that go on for 22, 23 episodes will have lots of plot holes in them because they're sort of making it up as they go along, but that doesn't have to be the case with a show like Ozark. And Jason Bateman was originally scheduled to direct all 10 episodes. So if you thought his acting was fantastic, you'd be surprised that he was also supposed to direct all 10 of those episodes. He only directed 4, but he set the tone and for both the opening of the show with the first 2 episodes and the finale for the last 2 episodes of the show. And to me, those are the most finely directed shows. I think the way he selects shots, he tells the story with the camera in a way that most television actors can't do when they make the crossover to directing, right? Most actors who direct find their sea legs in television because they have a good DP who's pretty solid. They have a whole production crew around them that knows what they're doing, and they could sort of be led by the nose through pretty much every shot. Not to put down television directors because some of these actors become quite outstanding, like Tony Goldman is one of them, and of course now Jason Bateman. But
can you think of a shot exactly that represents what you're talking about?
One of the best shots I loved was a long drone shot of him cruising at top speed across the Ozark lake, which I thought was beautiful. But the tones of the piece too, which I think were set by the director of photography, that the heavy blues and dark shadows really set I think a tone for the piece that emotionally affects you while you're watching it.
And I didn't feel too manipulated either with that tone, with the, whatever filter it is that they're using on the camera, in the way that I felt like when I saw Traffic, the movie Traffic, they
every time you go to Mexico, it turns yellow.
Yeah, every time I don't know why, every time we're in Mexico, it's got to be yellow.
Was that Traffic or was that Sicaria?
It was actually both. They did that.
I think Breaking Bad does it too.
But it started with
right.
Traffic. And traffic was they had three different filters. They had the New York filter, the Mexico filter, and then some kind of Midwesty or
Hey man, I love the amber filter in Mexico. I think that's where I need to be.
yeah.
Right, sepia toned.
Yeah, yeah, very, yeah, definitely, like really good lighting. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I like have mad props for anybody, any kind of artist that can cross over like that, from actor to director, from writer to actor, director. I have a tough enough time writing, screenwriting, and it's much kudos to people who are able to actually do that.
Yeah, and Jason, I thought did it with great proficiency. So I was just sort of reading the synopses of the first season because it's been years since I've seen the first season. I'm in no condition to really talk about it, but you're right. It was fantastic. Sorry, I'm dropping things. It was fantastic storytelling. What I loved was I sort of have a theory. I could throw this by you, that good storytelling is sort of the get your characters in deep shit and see if they can get out of it. And preferably towards the end of the series, you should be in grave doubt as to whether they're going to be able to escape their dilemma or not. And that's pretty much, I'd say every quarter we would get these enormous story turns in the show where you thought the man was clever enough to beat the system, and just as you thought he was going to make it, victory was snatched away from him, and he was plunged into deeper and deeper and deeper water. And so, I mean, watching the series for 4 seasons is an exercise in anxiety control as the person viewing it, because you're seeing this this person struggle to maintain life, and then you're seeing them struggle to maintain their moral integrity through the entire show, which of course, spoiler alert, does not happen. They are not able to defend their moral integrity, which I do think Marty tries to do throughout the entire series. I think he does have a moral compass that his wife lacks, but they lose
Definitely
that battle.
in comparison, for sure. When you compare the two of them, there's no question that Marty's got more of one, but still, in my opinion, not enough of one.
He's too easily influenced. He wants to go a certain way. He argues with Wendy about it, but she always wins, and he always ends up following her.
So we were talking a little bit about sort of gender roles and how they've been reversing over the last couple of years since the woke movement has brought a higher awareness to the way men and women interact. Sometimes not in such a good, it's not such a good awareness, of course, but in this case, we see a lot of women taking over the role of the man and the man assuming the role of the woman. Would you say that was sort of the case with Marty and Wendy Bird? Who wore the pants in the family, I wonder? What made that, and why can we say that this person wore the pants in the family as opposed to the other?
I think definitely Wendy. I think definitely Wendy wore the pants in the family, and sorry, I'm just reading some of the chats. Okay, I've got to get to some super chats too. So when we get done with this topic, let me get to the super chats. So I think Wendy definitely wore the pants in the family. Now, whether it was like traditionally, was Marty like the traditional woman and kind of going along with what Wendy did, and I think he did his own job of kind of standing up for himself in various circumstances, like especially when he went down to the cartel to act as the head of the cartel. That was like, to me, that was like the manliest moment, I guess, of that Marty had when he went down acting as the head of the cartel. But I think Wendy just bulldozes over Marty, just absolutely bulldozes over him, and she is going to do. I mean, there were so many incidents where they decided to do one thing and she changed her mind and didn't even tell him about it, and then springs it on him in public in front of everybody, and he has to go along with it, right? So I
I
would.
got the sense. I got the sense at one point in season 4 that she might be ruthless enough to take Marty out himself, and that she
Mm.
was building her own kingdom in a way, independent of him. Did you ever get that sense, or was that just my
Yeah,
paranoia?
definitely by season 4, because she made that deal with the sister against his will, I think.
Mhm.
And he kept wanting to make a deal with the FBI and get out of this life altogether. To get their new identities and just run and go. But she wasn't having any of that. She got her taste with the real estate, and then she got the casino, and now she was going to control all of Missouri, and she loved the thought of that. And once she got a taste of that, there was not even Marty was going to get in her way.
Yeah,
Well, and
massively
that
power hungry, massively power hungry.
well that leads me also to talking about as essences of characters, and Marty's established as a character who is conservative, and conservatism sort of guides everything that he does. He's a safe player.
Mhm.
Even in the dangerous game of money laundering, he's the safe player, the brains, the
Mhm.
guy you rely on. Right? He's the guy who has $8 million that he has to liquidate in that first season in order to pay Dell, the drug cartel guy, back. But you'd never know it the way he lives, because
Yeah.
he's like Ross Perot. He drives the American made or Japanese cheap car, because everything's about saving, everything's about conservation, everything's about looking ahead to the future.
And
And
perception too, right? He does it also for perception because he doesn't want to look like he's got a bunch of money that he's laundering.
is that so? I don't what Where do
Yeah,
you get that?
there were a number of references in season 1 and season 2 where I can't point to particular episodes, but where he was talking to, I think that they even talked about the car as well, because like I think maybe Wendy or the kids, when the kids found out, like, can't we afford something bigger now or better now, and he was like, no, it doesn't look good, we don't want to
Well,
look like we have all this money.
even old mafioso would think that way too. The Teflon Don, John Gotti, was the guy who changed that, because Dons before him didn't like ostentation. They didn't like attracting attention to themselves. But I think this is a great odd couple, right? As writers, don't you want to set up tons of conflict between people? And you do that mostly in effect, by taking people who are polar opposites and putting them in a room together and seeing what happens. And this is sort of what happens when you put a guy who's guided by conservatism with somebody who's guided by ruthless ambition, and who's
Yeah,
not afraid to
more or
move
less.
ahead, who wants what she wants and can't be stopped, and is less concerned about consequences than her partner. That makes for an interesting kind of alchemy, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna get to. So we're backing up on super chats, I think, because I haven't.
I
So,
I
Marilyn
wanted to
has.
just say a point on that
Oh,
though, before we move to super chat. So it's like, not only did they do that brilliantly between the two of them, but also between the families. And you pit the birds against the Langhorns, and the Langhorns against the Snells, and the Snells against the birds.
Langmores.
Mars.
I always say that wrong. I always heard it as okay. But and you've got all that going, and then there's people, different factions within the cartel also, that are having, like, the nephew and the sister, and it was just
And in
so.
the initial seasons as well, the obsessive FBI officer, his lover,
Mhm.
everybody's definitely in contention with each other, which is fantastic
Yeah, we
writing.
never even talked about the FBI officer and the links that he went to, and I mean that was such an incredible storyline as well.
He was scary. That was so many years ago, though, that I've seen it. We'll have to review it here in a couple minutes. Did you want to try the super chats?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just to catch up on it, Marilyn for $2. Thank you. Just with a cool pair. And then again, Marilyn again for 190. Wait for oh wait, I just went way behind. Marilyn again for 199. Thank you. $1.99, and then Sammy is bored again for 179. I think is that
That's a
pounds?
pound. That's
That's a
pounds.
pound. 179. Mark, are you wearing a tee from Dusk Riders Apparel?
Yes, I am. So Rose, if you're watching, here it is. There's your shirt.
There we go. All right. And then Marilyn for $5. Y'all would be so canceled by modern gender theorists. I guess speaking of our gender roles.
I'd
Well,
be interested. I'd be interested in knowing why. Well, here's where I think is an interesting distinction between Rand, who built up women as very powerful, and the current generation who builds up women as powerful. Rand never diminished men by building up women. It was the values that they pursued that made them powerful, and a Dagny Taggart was never a threat to a Francisco d'Anconia or a John Galt. But oftentimes these characters in our modern takes on male-female relationships are threats to each other. So Marty Byrde can't really exist in the same world as Wendy Byrde without being humiliated and cuckolded and pushed down and suppressed and not respected by his family for the sacrifices he's making, and for the clear compromises with his own integrity that he's making, and I think that's tough. I don't like that aspect of the new way of doing things. Right? We can have strong, capable women and strong, capable men. We don't need to have
without
strong, capable
canceling
women.
one canceling the other out,
Right?
right?
They need not. In fact,
They
they're
should complement each
complementary.
other.
They
Yeah.
complement, right? And I don't think that strong, capable men necessarily like weak, incapable women. And I don't think weak, incapable women like panty waist men. I think they attract one another and they complement one another. And we shouldn't see them as these dynamic opposites that have to exist one has to exist
Yeah.
at the expense of the other.
In a weird way, we sort of saw that in Ozark with the relationship between the Snells, the opium dealers. So I just keep calling her mamas. It's Darlene, I think, Darlene Snell.
Darlene.
And I can't rember the husband's
Jacob.
name.
Jacob.
Jacob. So in the beginning, they do, even though they're both fairly evil, but their strength is complementary to each other. In the beginning, you don't get this sense that he's like a Marty Byrde, that Jacob is. Jacob has his own strength and he makes his own decisions. And but then what starts happening is Darlene, after just complete loose cannon and losing her shit and shooting people, with the blowing people's heads off.
People that offend her.
Right. Then there's more conflict now between Darlene and Jacob, and at some point this kind of shift happens where Jacob is genuinely afraid of his wife. And in a way, I think that the Snell's relationship is sort of an interesting parallel to the Wendy Byrde and Marty Byrde relationship, because I could see Wendy doing to Marty what Darlene did to her husband, which was poison him because he was getting in the way of what she wanted, right? And she wanted a baby in her mind. She wanted to hold on to their land. She wanted a baby. He was getting in the way of that, and so she had to eliminate him. And you get the sense that Wendy could have done that same thing to Marty. I think the only thing that may have stopped Wendy from doing that was the children. She does have, in her twisted way, she has love for her children, and I think that if she actually seriously entertained getting rid of Marty to get what she wanted, she would have to also accept the fact that her children would never forgive her for it, and of course, we saw what happened with Ben, right? With how that whole
Yeah.
thing turned out with her own
That
daughter.
that too, and also just she needs the image of the complete family. Like you see the four of them standing up there in front of the casino, up on the stage, being honored as this philanthropic family. He's part of that too. So she
I would
doesn't
think
want.
that I think that would be a more influential image to her than the love of her kids. I mean, we're talking about people she lied to, manipulated, attempted to use for her own stuff, for what she wanted. So I don't get the sense that anybody. I mean, look, I think at the end, I think at the end of the, I think at the end of the day, you're supposed to get this idea that family sort of conquers all, right? I mean, because regardless of where anybody is on the moral map, in the end, they all come together to fight a common enemy at the very end, right? And they kill the one person that could take them down for real, where you think the jig is completely up, and they all come together as a family, and it's sort of, you sort of get that message, that tribalistic message, which feels very, very anti-objectivist. You know, it's not right or wrong that matters. It's not principles that matter, as it did for that Chicago cop who couldn't live with his conscience for letting these people go for his own benefit, who had to go back and do the right thing. In the end, it's about this sort of group identity where you come together because you've experienced hardship together, and you share that element of life, and and that loyalty to each other in hard times carries you through. Like, you know, family over everything sort of became the one of the thematic elements of that piece that I think I find a little bit off-putting, to be honest with you. Maybe because I never had a family to feel that sense of loyalty to over the truth. And that, right. I mean, I would never defend a friend of mine who got in a fight in a bar who started it. But if he was picked on, I'd get his back. But if he didn't, if it was his fault, to me, it's like, well, you gotta let justice happen. So I can't imagine coming to somebody's defense who's wrong.
Yeah, and we saw a great arc with that with Charlotte. Is it Charlotte?
Yeah,
there's Charlotte and Jonah. Yeah, they both had good arcs.
Charlotte and Jonah, you know, really initially rejected at various stages, right? Jonah, you know, the Ben thing, what happened to Ben, Jonah absolutely rejected that. Charlotte rejected the lifestyle even earlier. I mean, I loved some of Charlotte's, you know, comments at the dinner table.
She annoyed me. She annoyed the shit out of me. Oh my God, I wanted to kill her.
Oh, she brought in the lawyer. She was going to emancipate herself from the family.
All of it's justified, but none of it worked for me emotionally. And so maybe I'm being hypocritical. Maybe I'm like,
I felt like she had a moral compass while she was doing all that. Like
she really did.
Able to see this something is not right here, and I shouldn't be here anymore. She almost got out, and then she started drinking like her mom. She started like working under her mom's wing.
Okay, what turned her around? Can anybody out there watching in the audience remind us? It's been so long since I've seen those episodes. What was it that turned Charlotte around? Because she was dead set against this family, and she was right. She may have been annoying as hell. Her personality may have sucked. She had bad teenager shit going on, but she was also right. Just like Jonah was right. Jonah was right to despise his mother. She betrayed her brother, who was mentally ill.
Right.
She let him go to the slaughter. Now, I feel like here again, we're getting
the slaughter. She led him to the slaughter.
She led him to the slaughter, and I feel like we get that same trope that we always get, where, you know, selfishness means sacrificing others to yourself, and we get that in spades in this, where, you know, you're as Marty Bird, you're either sacrificing your integrity for the sake of your family to gain something, or you're sacrificing somebody else so that you can continue to live. It's like a game of carnage, right?
Yeah,
that's what you're watching for 4 seasons. Carnage.
So
Yeah.
I'm looking to see if we've got any replies yet on the chat just about what
Charlotte.
question that you had about Charlotte. Mary Aline did come in again at $2 saying that what she meant about us being so canceled, she didn't mean it as any kind of criticism. I think it was meant as a compliment. So. And then Rose again for 199 euros. Didn't watch Ozark, but thank you, Mark. Oh, for the T-shirt. So I'm trying. So Allie's saying that Wendy convinced her to come back, but what did she? How did she convince her? Like, how do you? What do you possibly? What did she say to her? I felt like there was some kind of action that Charlotte saw on her own, but I can't quite remember. I know.
I think it was around the end of season 3, if I recall, but I don't remember exactly. It seemed like it was not big enough to justify it, and maybe that's why it doesn't stand out.
It was almost like, yeah, because it was the end of a season, and then the beginning, I'm pretty sure beginning of season 4, now Charlotte is back. So Allie is saying, and because the grandfather just wanted to get back at Wendy by taking her. Well, this was before that.
No, yeah, this is before.
This was
Yeah,
way
like
before that.
we find her in season 4 and perhaps even season 3. I don't remember. Suddenly, totally compliant. Suddenly going along with everything the family wants. How do you go from getting a van, moving out, and preparing to be an autonomous person, separated from this criminal enterprise that is your family, to being totally compliant and helping out and complicitous in every crime that they're committing? How do you go from that? How do you make that leap? Again, it's like the same way Jonah makes the leap at the very end. There's no thought. It's just an impulsive sense of protection and defense for what's yours.
I could see that from Jonah. I could, because Jonah had there were hints of Jonah along the way, right? He shot with the rifle, right? At the very end. Who did he shoot?
He shot the cop. He shot at the very. Yeah, he shot the.
I could. That wasn't a sudden thing to me. That wasn't. I mean, it for sure was like an oh shit moment. But it wasn't for me. It wasn't out of the blue, because they've been telegraphing that ever since, somebody put a gun in Jonah's hand, and ever since he I think when Jacob took him out hunting as well. But he had been into guns long before that because of the guy that lived with them, who I can't remember, who was an awesome character. Buddy. I loved him as a character. He was so great. So
yeah, he
Can
was.
we talk
great.
about the writers and their what you read, Jax, about the ending that they had planned?
Yeah, so the writers,
which I had talked about before I heard
before
any
you
of this.
even knew about it. Yes, so the writers, I wish that I had it pulled up right now on my phone, but basically the writers, when they one of the showrunners, when they first wrote that, first saw the show, first created the show, the end was always going to be about the nature of capitalism and how it corrupts people and power, and that was why they chose to kill Ruth, because she was a victim of capitalism and classism. And
the people with money and class, they rise up, and the poor people, no matter how hard they try, they're going to end up dead.
Which is a very hard hit. I mean, even in such a subtly acted show as this, those themes were very hard hit. In fact, I was hoping they would go against that, and that Ruth would pull out of the gravitational pull of that criminality, because clearly she's the smartest one of them all. Certainly Wendy and Marty are very clever, but she was smart and also had integrity, which the other characters had lost, and came from nothing, which we can't say about Wendy and Marty. They're privileged, right? And so she, of all people, deserved to live, not to die. And of course she died. All of the poor people died. All of the people who were under that bar of influence and political power and wealth never made it. It was only the people in that set that writers identify as capitalistic, which they conflate with power and the levers of power, those were the ones who made it. And it was even made plain by that theme came out hard when the cop was trying to arrest him. He said, no, you're trying to make yourselves into the Kennedys. I'm not going to let you do it. I'm here to let you know that there is justice. And the message of the piece was, no, there isn't. Yeah. And of course we see examples of this cliche of capitalism, this abortion, this cartoon version of capitalism happening today. Nancy Pelosi's husband was nabbed for a DUI up there in Napa, and the DA is not doing anything about it yet. They're not releasing any of the records. They're not releasing his mugshot. They're not releasing the details of the body cams, nothing, because of an ongoing investigation. How much do you want to bet this guy serves absolutely no time? And how would some other poor sap fail who ran through a stop sign and crashed into another car under the influence of alcohol? Do you think that person would have his license? Do you think they would not be ruined by that DUI? Yeah. Okay, so that just shows that, I mean, this is what Hollywood sees as representing capitalism.
Understand the definition of capitalism. Like, how is this respecting people's property rights? Nobody in this show is respecting people's property rights. Because
they don't think that capitalism is about the property rights. They think it's about government being leveraged by wealthy people to promote their interests. That's what it is to them.
They confuse capitalism with cronyism.
Corruption.
And out of all the people that was a true valuer of human life, I think Ruth was probably out of all this. Ruth cared about Ben far more than Wendy did, and that was actually.
And Wyatt, she wanted to get Wyatt out of there. Go get your education. Yeah.
So Allie says for $5, can we talk about season 3, episode 9, which we just sort of briefly touched on? The way they left the brother to the mob due to being unable to handle his mental illness. That hit home. She's a terrible human. Yes, absolutely.
She's a bad person. Yeah. She's a very, very bad person.
Yeah.
And Mark,
she is such a. I mean, she has demonstrated up to this point that she can get herself out of damn near any situation. She could have done something more with Ben. She could have, but it was just such a fairly quick decision on her part, and she made it seem like she had no other choice, and that was just absolute bullshit.
Well, I want to ask you guys a question as objectivists, and anybody in the audience who's an objectivist who might understand this. Ruthlessness and cruelty are sometimes personality characteristics that Rand would point to as positives, right? But we see ruthlessness and cruelty in spades in this show, and they're certainly not positives. Wendy Bird is ruthless with respect to Ben. She's ruthless with respect to getting what she wants. So there's the version of ruthlessness that objectivists might get behind, and one that they don't. Can you make the distinction between what those two types of ruthlessness are? Because you could say that
for values. So the cop, the detective who ends up getting killed in the end, he was ruthless in his pursuit of justice. He didn't play to cronyism. He didn't play to influence or power. He was uncorruptible. And I think one of the big distinctions between bad ruthlessness and objectivist ruthlessness is the incorruptibility and the absolute dedication toward positive moral values. That's my take on it.
And I would say in the case of Wendy, she was ruthless for power. She was also contradicting herself, because she would say, it's all for the family, or she would complain to Marty that he was doing stuff that was against the family. So she acted like she valued her family, but that was contradictory. And if she really valued her family, she wouldn't be putting them in such danger. And so I see her as like that ruthlessness came into play when she makes those decisions that she's going to rise this family up, at all cost, no matter what it does to Marty, no matter what it does to Charlotte, no matter what it does. And I think we can talk about this. I think, they definitely put in this situation where we see her backstory, we see her evil father, so that we now have some sort of sympathy. I think they're trying to create sympathy for her and why she is motivated the way she is, why she's ruthless the way she is, because her father was. But did that work? Did that fall flat? Did it make you more sympathetic for her?
I actually liked that because as a writer, we never want to draw the mustache twirling villains, right? We want bad guys who you can like empathize with too, or sympathize with to an extent.
Why? I mean, I certainly know this is. I mean, I have sympathy for that point of view. I get it. It's what I've been raised on. But do we? Do we really want that in art? Do we want that? Do we want bad guys you can sympathize with, or is that for the psychologist couch?
That might be maybe that's for the psychologist. I mean,
I don't know. I'm curious.
We should invite Gina on the show, maybe.
Should we be empathizing with people who are anti-valuers, who are nihilistic, whose relentless pursuit of things is not relentless pursuit of value? Like, that's what I would say. Ruthlessness is a relentless pursuit of something, right? And you don't let anything stand in your way to acquire that object. And it's either a value, like you said, Jax, or it's something negative. And why is it good storytelling to make us feel for the person who pursues something bad deliberately?
I have an answer.
Okay.
I have the answer, Mark. Now
You start pointing your finger, Jax.
Am I pointing my fingers? I'm not gonna forever the spaghetti plate. That's a Rozzy-ism there. But what I like about finding out about Wendy's backstory is it makes me kind of go, oh wow, she did have she had a shit childhood, and her father was a jerk to her, but for that allows me to judge her more harshly, I guess.
More
harshly, because
More?
people have choices. She makes a choice, right? For all the people that grew up in that same exact scenario that Wendy did, they didn't go out and become power lusting, like criminals. She made that choice. So what I like about that as a writer is to show, like, look, these people had real lives, right? And it's not, so maybe it has like a backfiring element on me. I don't know that the writers really intended for me to be able to, judge her better or harsher or whatever. But if she had no backstory, if it was just, she was just born that way. Yeah, she was just born that way. It's not as interesting to me. Because what's really interesting to me as a writer and as a wannabe philosopher is the power of choice. It's what are the choices and decisions that you make when you're faced with the shit. And
So
that's where morality really, that's where valuing becomes critical and important.
which leads me to the point that I sort of touched on earlier. It seems that at the end of the show, the bond between Marty and Wendy is more powerful than it's ever been, right? At the top of the show, they're probably on their way out. She's having an affair. He's not appreciated by her. And it's sort of a trial by fire that brings them together. But through that fire, I think anybody who's gone through difficult times with a spouse or a relationship, it tells you everything about that person. Is there anything in her character besides her cleverness or intelligence that is admirable? I mean, the things that she does are so horrific. How can you come out of that trial by fire, even though you survived all the perils that were put in front of you together? How could you come out of that with a stronger bond for somebody who is demonstrably anti-life, anti-value, right? Except for whatever they want.
I was disappointed that they came together at the end. I would have loved to have seen Marty go his separate ways, but
It just feels
all,
like,
all sense of hope was squashed at the end.
right? It
Yeah,
seems like
in
a tribal thing, like family is, we're just family, and family
Yeah,
stays
and
together.
contrast that to Skylar and Walter, right, in Breaking Bad, and how there was she completely broke from him, and rightfully so. It was the right, good moral decision for her to choose that.
And contemptuously had an affair with another man under his nose and let him know what she was
Forgot about
doing.
that.
And stayed with him and laundered money for him and did stuff for him only to save for children, but
Right.
never really ever
Yeah.
approved. I mean, she was essentially trapped, and really was quite the hero. I mean, we talk about the Jesse character being the hero of that story, but she was too. I mean, the things that she had to do, you know, I think she was fighting for that higher value all the time.
Yeah.
And you just don't get that same sense of integrity from anyone in the family.
I think kind of the sad thing about how you were just talking about Marty in the end, how is it that they came out stronger? I saw it sort of differently. I saw it like he just came out 100% whipped. Like just completely, like, I think all along at the top of the series, he is trying to fight for some kind of moral integrity, and not as strong as he could. He's, he ends up getting fairly bullied by his wife. He's sort of, for a while, he's in the power position when he knows about the affair that she's had. And then there was that one, we haven't even touched on, like, the absolute sexlessness of their marriage and Marty in general as a man. That moment when he's having sex with her, and he's doing it in the same way that the video is shown from the guy that she was, and she's like, looks back at him and is like, oh shit. But I think what happened in the end was he just completely succumbed to her monstrosity and to her will, and in effect he sort of locked himself in a jail or whatever, jail cell. So we have a lot more super chats from Mary Lean again for $5. The difference between, we were talking about this, and actually I really like this statement. So the difference between economic power and political power is critical. Ruthlessness can be good, cruelty is never good. I think that's a good distinction to make. I like that distinction.
Well, what about when it's cruelty, as in not cruelty towards people, but an acceptance that reality itself is what it is, right? So there's a cruelty in that. What I think a lot of people in today's world would call the bottom line. Like, the bottom line with capitalism, there's always the bottom line. Well, this is true. The bottom line exists, and underneath it, you're done, right? No businessman can forget that bottom line and still remain in business and alive. So there's a cruelty to the sense that reality is what it is, and you acknowledge it. You acknowledge it bald-facedly, without apology or excuse. There's a cruelty in that. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe it's semantics. And I could be out of my depth on it, but to me, the cruelty has some sort of implication of a purposeful a purposeful desire to hurt when it's not necessary. Because I think like a ruthlessness in what you were just, that to me, what you were just describing is more ruthless. Like, yes, I have a ruthless understanding of reality, and this is what the world is. But cruelty to me has more of a motive power aspect where you're actually acting to do something to harm. I could be wrong on the semantics.
I think there's various contexts of it that we could probably say there are contexts wherein cruelty is a terrible thing, and contexts wherein it's an acknowledgement of some form of bottom line, that some inescapable reality that doesn't care about your feelings, right? The universe doesn't care about your goddamn feelings,
right?
And
yeah.
Profits and losses.
Then?
Yes, well, I mean, acknowledging that there are just realities that can't be avoided, irrespective of how you feel about them. That is a sort of cruelty. Right?
I'm thinking now of Heinlein's novel, "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress," right?
Yes. I mean, he does talk about the world of the moon. I mean, you really get the sense that it's an unforgiving place. If you do one thing wrong, you are fucked. And the people who live there know it, right? We're insulated from it in some respects, living in the society that we live in. As Alex Epstein would say, we make a harsh, cruel universe livable and nice by adjusting all of the values in it to accommodate human life, because it's not accommodating to human life. All you have to do is watch one episode of Naked and Afraid to see how cruel nature is. It doesn't give a fuck about you. It doesn't care, right? If that airlock in Heinlein's for the loonies, if that airlock goes, or you're outside and your pressure suit depressurized, you're fucked.
Yeah,
you're just fucked, right?
I'm going off on a small tangent. I listen to NPR a lot, but one of the sponsors of NPR is like Earth Justice, and they always say Earth Justice because Earth needs a really good lawyer, and I'm like, Earth does not need a goddamn thing. Like,
Earth doesn't need shit. I've been having, we're off on this tangent, so we might as well go there. I've been having these discussions with environmentalists, who I like to call eco-statists, all for the last month on Twitter. I say, you're sacrificing ephemeral human life for something that has been here and will always be here. The Earth ain't gonna die, folks. It ain't gonna die, but you know what? You and me are.
Mm-hmm.
And so will our kids and their kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. The Earth has sustained far worse than anything we can throw at it. Let's stop treating it like it's a fragile thing, and live, for Christ's sakes, because we're the fragile things.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So end rant. Back to Ozark. Alley for $5 says Marty seemed to be on the road to become leader of the Mexican cartel. Would have been a much better ending, in my opinion. I just don't get why the sudden U-turn. And I think we've all kind of been talking about that a bit. What did you think of that, Jennifer?
I don't think Marty becoming head of the cartel would have been good. I think them turning towards a good life, like getting new identities and starting over in Tahiti, would have been better than that, because at least they. But
do you think it would have been better for him to go be the head of the cartel over just sticking with Wendy and kind of falling in line with her?
Bad versus badder.
Yeah.
Results. No. Mm-mm. I mean, that's going to be that whole lifestyle is scary and awful and super risky. And but they kind of signed up for that. They were addicted to the risk. So maybe they had conditioned themselves to know no other way. I mean, that's kind of how it played out. And maybe it wasn't realistic for them to go live a normal life.
I don't think Marty would have been a good drug cartel leader.
He would have probably gotten killed.
He experimented with it briefly, and he didn't have the stomach for it. As we
I think he was a good substitute teacher, but I don't think that he would have been like credentialed. I don't think he could have gotten tenure on that.
He got the books. He got the books covered, and provided he had the backing of his boss, and they knew it, then he had some authority to act. But it's not his bag, man. Wendy might have been an interesting cartel. See, this is where I'm talking about these gender roles and switches that I think are interesting. They're a bit forced in some cases, but in this case, it sort of worked. Who becomes the head of the cartel? The sister, right? The sister, and her rise is sort of I don't know, one of the more just causes out there. I mean, her son is murdered. Of course, he's a psychopath, and I think her revenge for her son was somewhat justified, even though it meant killing Ruth. I was hoping those two would come together. I was hoping that she would forgive Ruth, right? I was hoping there'd be a little woman's club there. That's what I was hoping for, right? Yeah. But Ruth didn't. Ruth pushed her in a corner. Right? She's like, "Do it." He was a hard ass in that.
Stand on ceremony. Ruth does not hold back.
What was that famous line? She says she comes running into the bird's house, and she's like, "If you're gonna want to stop me, you're gonna have to kill me."
Yeah, that was intense.
Oh, it was great.
That was one of the better lines that I'd seen her throw out there. Yeah, she died. I hated the fact that she died. She should have lived. I mean, I know she said in interviews that she died. Her character died emotionally after Wyatt was killed, but I think she still should have lived. If anything, to give us the broader message that good people can still get by in the world. They can still prosper even with these terrible elements, these demonic elements tearing at them. It would have been a much more uplifting thing for me to see her survive, because she deserved it. But if they had to kill her, she died right. She died like this. She did this. She didn't cower. She held on to her dignity, and died like a hero for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was just too bad. It was just too bad that they had to kill her. I think the one Sammy's board again. Thanks for what is that, a pound. But I think, and we're nearing the end of the show. I think we have announcements to make as well. But one thing that I wanted to say briefly, just to think about, I think we are doing a Clubhouse after this, so we can talk more about it on the Clubhouse. But in terms of Wendy and how she relates to her children, and I see this in not just Wendy, but in like a lot of like the mob, kind of movies and family, when you're talking about like the importance of family. But to Wendy in particular, I don't think she valued her children as much as she saw them as her possessions. And that's why it was so horrific for her when her father was threatening to take away her possessions. She wasn't looking at, she hid behind the children will be better off with, the saying the children won't be better off with the grandfather because, he's a horrible person. But I think for her, children were, and everybody in her life, I think, is a possession. There's not like an actual life valuing thing. If she truly valued the life of her children, she would have never asked them to be part of the crime family, right? No parent can. I don't understand how any parent can, at least with like Tony Soprano, he tried to keep his kids free and from that and separate from that life. But anyhow, that was just something that I wanted to touch on. But
Copy
so
that.
Do we have any announcements of what the TV talks in the future that we want to talk about?
I think you guys will have to do that.
Yeah, so we have on our website a list of the TV shows coming up, but I will read through them So listen closely for TV shows that you either love or are interested in watching for future. So our next TV talk will be June 24th, 2 weeks from today. It's called Why Didn't They Ask Evans? It's an Agatha Christie TV show.
Oh, okay. So I just started reading the book.
Oh, okay. Well, good. We'll have that as a contrast. Do you think you'll be done in 2 weeks?
I'll try. It's a pretty easy read.
Well, just watch the show for sure. And then the next one, July 8th, is Inventing Anna, and which also stars Julia Garner, who played Ruth. July 22nd, we're going to do we're going to do season 4 of Stranger Things. And
Cool.
the last 2 episodes of that will drop July 1st. And then August 4th, we're going to do a show called Clark. I think it's Swedish. We heard about this when Jackson and I were in Cannes, and it sounded really interesting. We're going to have a bye week, August 19th. September 2nd, we're doing Mr. Sunshine, Yaron Brooks' favorite.
We're gonna try and get Yaron on, so everybody hit him up on Twitter.
Yeah, tell him September 2nd, we need him to do TV talk with us. September 16th, Call My Agent, and September 30th, Outer Range. So that's what it's looking up to be. We're going to try to stick to the schedule as much as our schedules will allow. But the main thing right now is the next show will be Why Didn't They Ask Evans? So there you go.
Awesome. Well, guys, we had a bit of a rough start because of my COVID brain. But I think
you did awesome
I think it was,
as usual, Mark.
I think it was a fun show. I hope everybody enjoyed it out there. I guess we are doing a clubhouse, but Daniel, I don't know if Rosie's set it up or not. I don't see any announcements that we have to make. Daniel's going to set that up for us. So, folks, there will be a clubhouse after this. You can go to if you want to keep talking about Ozark. So I'm sure there's.
Allie is saying, Mark, that you're going to be in Orlando for a Supernatural conference on June 24th. So we may have to revisit the schedule and update it accordingly.
Yes, this is true.
We should never check with Mark on his schedule. We should just check with like his super fans. Like, hey guys, where's Mark going to be on this day?
This is true because they will know it better than I will. Anyway, guys, it's been a great talk. It's Mark Pellegrino here at Jennifer Bouani and Jack Schumann on TV Talk, brought to you by the Ayn Rand Center UK. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks with some more television. Peace.
Bye, everybody.